The revelation of the Sacred Grotto. Previously, on Romance on the High Seas, Alexander and Helena, guided by the small mystical doe with the spiral of white markings on her right flank, entered a sacred grotto where time folded back upon itself, separating them temporarily from their companions who remained suspended in a motionless trance. Deep within the cavern, they discovered the font of remembrance and drank of its transforming waters, water that does not quench thirst, but dissolves the veils between what one is and what one has always been. Alexander's ancestor revealed truths that reorganized everything they thought they knew. The sword does not choose the strongest, but the one who has learned to vibrate at the frequency of justice, tempered by compassion. Helena witnessed, in a vision she cannot yet fully share, the fate of a distant descendant who would wield Excalibur in an age of absolute shadow. And Alexander underwent an initiation that no battle before could have granted him. He learned to surrender so completely to himself that the separation between seeker and sought dissolved, and the sword recognized in his blood the echo of the warrior who once kept her. Now they descend the mountain, transformed, carrying what cannot be left behind because it has become part of the very fabric of who they are. In this new episode, we shall discover together how the return to camp will reveal the full magnitude of what transpired. For their companions, Alexander and Helena had barely departed. Time had not flowed the same way, and that discovery, that the mountain possesses sufficient consciousness to bend the very fabric of time in service of a greater purpose, will be only the first of many unfoldings that will transform the entire group. The sacred waters from the grotto will be brought to each member. Nevem will awaken to his ancestral identity as guardian druid, recognizing a vow he made before he ever incarnated into this life. Makeda will discover that Amina is not her handmaiden. She is her mother, a powerful Wicca who prepared her from the shadows through decades of love worn as disguise. And Hael will emerge as a peacemaker gifted with vision of the celestial hosts and an understanding of the sacred cycles that govern all that exists. When the pact is sealed by Nevem with words of power drawn from the ancestral tongue of the Druids, the group will descend as a unified circle of the chosen, no longer separate individuals, but threads of a tapestry woven across generations so that this precise moment could come to pass. And the Aurora Borealis, witness of the celestial hosts, will dance above them during the final vigil before the return, confirming that they were seen, that they were recognized, that what has been done cannot be undone. Opening and the temporal return. There was something wrong with the camp, wrong in the way of things that are more right than they should be, that betray the intervention of something which does not belong to the ordinary world. Snow fell in delicate flakes upon the mystical mountain with that particular quality of snow that is not merely precipitation, but presence, each crystal dancing in the air like a fragment of star loosed from the firmament, each one carrying within its impossible geometry the record of atmospheric conditions so singular they would never arrange themselves in precisely that way again. Alexander and Helena descended the white slopes with the slow steps of those who had learned, over the course of their descent, that haste would be an insult to what they had just experienced. The silence between them was the kind that exists only between people who have shared something that exceeds the capacity of language to contain. Not an absence of words, but the presence of something denser than words. The mountain itself seemed to breathe alongside them, as though it possessed sufficient consciousness to recognize that these two who descended were different from the two who had climbed, and that this difference deserved to be witnessed with care. When the camp emerged between the trees, Alexander stopped. Helena stopped beside him, and both stood completely still for a long moment, processing what their eyes reported with that particular slowness of a mind confronted with something it already knows will fundamentally alter its understanding of everything that came before. The small doe who had guided them up the mountain lay peacefully beside her mother, chewing what Makeda offered her with a tenderness that had a maternal quality, not of a maiden feeding an enchanted creature, but of someone who had spent enough time in the creature's presence to develop a private language of affection. The mother doe rested beneath the sheltering shade of a broad pine, her deep and serene eyes observing all things with a wisdom that seemed to transcend her animal form, as though behind those eyes there dwelled an intelligence that was not of the deer, but had chosen the form of the deer for reasons only she knew completely. And the other companions, Makeda, Amina, Nevem, and Hael, were occupied with the everyday tasks of the camp with the natural ease of people who had not spent hours in an altered state awaiting the return of colleagues gone to seek the impossible. They were simply doing what is done in a camp at the end of the afternoon, adjusting ropes, feeding the fire, organizing provisions, entirely unaware of the fact that hours, perhaps entire days, had passed since Alexander and Helena set out following the little deer's telepathic call. It was as though two temporal rivers had flowed in parallel, one swift and torrential, carrying Alexander and Helena through experiences that had reorganized their understanding of everything, the other calm and nearly still, keeping their companions in a suspension they had no awareness of having lived. And now the rivers were converging at this precise moment of reunion, and the merging produced that particular turbulence born from the collision of temporalities that physics was never designed to describe. Makeda was the first to notice the couple's approach, and it was precisely the naturalness of her reaction that confirmed what Alexander and Helena already suspected. "Back from your walk?" she asked with a warm smile that bore no trace whatsoever of worry or anxiety over a prolonged absence. "I've been here feeding this delightful little creature that appeared out of nowhere. Look how gentle she is." The incongruence between Makeda's perception of time and the experience Alexander and Helena had lived was so absolute that the couple exchanged a look that said everything without needing a single word. And then, Helena felt the shiver that travels the spine when a realization of true magnitude arrives, not gradually, but all at once, with the full weight of what it implies. The small doe, in guiding them up the mountain to the Sacred Grotto, had not merely led them through physical space. She had led them through different layers of time. And to you who accompany this crossing, who enter with us this territory where time is not a straight line, but a river with multiple currents that sometimes flow at different speeds without those within each current knowing the others exist, I leave a simple but essential request. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comments sharing what you feel, what you see, what this narrative awakens in depths where reason rarely reaches. Every gesture of yours is a flame that joins the others, strengthening the invisible current that unites hearts across time and the mysteries that await revelation. In doing so, you do not merely support this work. You become part of this tapestry of light that we are weaving together. The story continues, but it is your presence that keeps the fire alive. Nevem, who until that moment had remained in silence, observing the scene with the attentiveness of one who reads layers of meaning that others do not perceive, finally approached the couple. And there was something different in his gaze, a depth that Alexander could not name precisely, but that he recognized. It was the look of someone who, while the others had not noticed that time had folded, had felt something. Not the same as what Alexander and Helena had lived, but the negative of it, the hollow of an experience that had not arrived in full, like one who hears music through a thick wall and recognizes that there is music, but cannot discern the melody. "You saw something up there, didn't you?" he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. It was not a question. It was the recognition of someone who had understood, before hearing any explanation, that what stood before him was real and important, and larger than any frame that common language could offer. The revelation of the temporal gap. The truth about time did not arrive all at once. It arrived in layers, each one opening space for the next, with that gradual quality of revelations that respect the capacity of those who receive them to absorb what they are being given. Helena breathed deeply, feeling the cold mountain air fill her lungs as she searched for the right words to explain what exceeded any ordinary vocabulary. "We need you to understand something extraordinary that has happened," she began, looking not at any one companion specifically, but at the group as a single entity, because what she had to say belonged to all of them at once. "When the small doe invited us to follow her," and it was a telepathic invitation, a silent voice that resonated directly in our minds without using the air as an intermediary, "we followed her up the mountain to a grotto that rises far beyond this point. We spent hours inside, living through things that defy any attempt at logical description. But when we look at you now, we realize that for you..." She paused with that particular pause of someone who needs a moment before saying something that will change everything. It was as though we had never left. The silence that followed was dense with incomprehension and awe. The specific silence that occurs when a truth arrives too large to be processed immediately, and so remains suspended in the air, waiting for each person present to find their own way into it. Amina was the first to break that silence with the diagnostic precision of one whose intuition does not speculate, it perceives. Her deep, dark eyes studied Helena and Alexander with an intensity that was reading, not observation, as though she could see not only surfaces, but the energetic vibrations emanating from the couple's bodies, subtly different from the vibrations they had carried before they departed. "I felt it," she murmured, her voice low and laden with meaning that was simultaneously confirmatory and revelatory, confirming to herself what she had intuited, revealing to the others what she had kept silent. "When you left, there was a moment when everything around us seemed to freeze. The birds stopped singing with that abruptness that is not natural silence, but imposed silence. The wind ceased. The flames of the fire went strangely still, as though the air had forgotten how convection works. It lasted only an instant, or at least that was how it seemed. But in that instant, I felt as though the very fabric of reality had been torn and then stitched back together by hands that know what they are doing. I thought it was my imagination, but it was not." Nevem stepped a few paces away from the group. With that particular need, certain revelations have to be received while the body has space around it, as though the information required physical territory in which to land. His eyes fixed on the snow-covered heights where the mystical grotto hid itself among ancient boulders and pines, as though he could see through the distance and the snow the mouth of the cavern the others would not know how to find. "I believe that only those chosen for certain functions are to be, and will be, called to the journey that must be undertaken alone," he declared, each word pronounced with the solemn deliberateness of affirmations that have taken decades of observation to form completely. "However united we may be in this expedition in search of Excalibur, we must understand that the trials this sacred place imposes are necessary tests for our development as human beings. Some paths can only be walked alone, even when we walk side by side with loyal companions." The words carried more than abstract wisdom. They carried the quality of one who speaks of something known from the inside, not through theory. Alexander nodded with that slowness of affirmations that need the time they take to become fully true. "Time in this place does not flow as we have grown accustomed to experiencing it," he explained, attempting to translate into words an experience that had fundamentally exceeded every linguistic category he possessed. "It is as though the mountain holds consciousness, its own temporal pulse, and is capable of creating different bubbles or currents of time according to the greater purposes that govern this sacred territory. The doe did not lead us merely to a different physical place. She led us to a different layer of reality, where the laws we know bend to accommodate deeper mysteries." There was a particular dignity in the way he said it. not the dignity of one who proclaims a wonder, but of one who describes it with respect for its own magnitude, neither exaggerating nor diminishing. Hael, who until that moment had remained silent, absorbing everything with the contemplative serenity that was his hallmark, finally spoke with an observation that arrived from an angle no one had considered. "Did you notice that the mother doe stayed here the entire time, forming a circle around us?" he asked, gesturing toward the majestic animal beneath the pine. "While the small doe guided the two of you, the mother remained here with us, but not passively. She walked in circles around our camp, and it was precisely during those circles that all of us entered a kind of gentle trance. It was not sleep, but neither was it full wakefulness. It was as though we were suspended between states of consciousness, waiting for something to be completed." He paused with that pause of someone who has just understood what they are saying in the very act of saying it. She was not merely guarding us. She was containing us within time, tracing the perimeter of a temporal bubble where we were preserved while the two of you fulfilled what needed to be fulfilled. Makeda wrapped her arms around herself, and the shiver that moved through her had nothing to do with the cold of the snowy mountain. "So we were all wrapped inside a cosmic ritual without even realizing it," she murmured, her eyes wide with that particular magnitude of revelations that reorganized not only the present, but the memory of everything that came before. "The small doe had a specific mission with the two of you, and the mother had the mission of keeping us in temporal stasis while the chosen ones fulfilled their particular destiny." She looked at the mother doe with a reverence that was entirely new, as though she were seeing for the first time something that had been before her all along. That this creature was not simply an animal, but a priestess of the invisible forces governing that territory. The recognition of that truth made everyone in the group feel simultaneously humility and that specific wonder of people who have understood they are participating in something far greater than any of them had planned for when they accepted the journey. The descent of night and the dance of the gods. The mountain had given what it gives, and now it demanded what it demands of all who have received, that they tend to the body with the same reverence with which they had tended to the soul. The sun began its slow and majestic descent behind the snowy peaks, staining the sky with shades that seemed impossible to coexist, oranges that carried violets within themselves, pinks that contained blues within themselves, as though the twilight of that particular mountain obeyed its own laws of color that the rest of the world did not know. The temperature plummeted with that abruptness specific to altitudes that do not negotiate. The cold of the afternoon was a cold of warning, but the cold of the night would be a cold of consequence. Nevem took the initiative of organizing the camp with that natural authority that requires no proclamation to be recognized. The authority that emerges when someone possesses genuine knowledge of what they are doing and the others sense it before any announcement is made. "We need to pitch the tents and build a strong fire," he said with a gentle firmness that was simultaneously instruction and care. "This place may be sacred and protective, but the mountain at night does not forgive the unprepared. Men, come with me. Women, perhaps you might begin preparing the evening meal." In that division, there was no imposed hierarchy, but rather the recognition of who knew how to do what most efficiently in that particular moment. What followed was work of a ritualistic quality, not because anyone had decided it would be ritual, but because certain activities, performed in certain places with a certain collective intention, naturally assume a dimension that exceeds the functional. Alexander, Nevem, and Hael drove stakes into the snow with a precision and care that went beyond the need to pitch an efficient tent. There was something in the way each stake was placed that communicated respect for the ground into which it was driven, as though each anchoring point were also a way of asking permission. The women organized provisions and cut vegetables with that attentiveness which transforms mechanical action into presence. Not merely cutting, but cutting with awareness of what was being cut, recognizing that those foods would be nourishment not only for bodies that had labored hard, but for souls that had traveled far further than any physical distance could measure. The fire that emerged from the collective work crackled with that particular vigor of flames that were kindled with intention, not merely with wood. Gathered around the fire with steaming bowls of stew in their hands, there was a quality of communion that lay beyond the everyday of a group sharing a meal. It was a silent and collective recognition that they stood at a threshold of significant transformations, of truths that awaited revelation, of a journey that revealed itself with every step to be far more than the search for a legendary object. It was a spiritual pilgrimage, an alchemical process of inner transmutation that was only now unfolding its first mysteries. Makeda, whose genuine curiosity was one of her most constant gifts, finally asked what had been burning in her mind. How long were you two actually away from us? And what did the small doe show you in the grotto? Helena exchanged a glance with Alexander, that silent consultation of couples who have developed their own language for decisions that must be made together in a fraction of a second. It was ours, Makeda, Helena answered at last. We followed the doe along trails that seemed to appear and vanish as we walked, until we reached a grotto whose entrance was concealed behind rock formations and ice. And inside, there were luminescent crystals in the walls, a thread of water so pure it seemed to exist in a category entirely apart from any water we have ever known. And there was... She paused with that pause of someone who needs a moment before saying something for which no adequate words exist. There was someone waiting for us. Alexander continued where Helena had paused. When we looked back at our companions in that moment, before entering the grotto fully, all of you appeared caught in an inexplicable trance, bodies moving in slow motion, as though you were submerged in a substance denser than air. He looked at each face around the fire with the attentiveness of one who wants to be certain that what they are saying is fully received. We understood that something extraordinary was unfolding, and we chose not to intervene, but to answer the call and trust the process that was revealing itself. It was then that the sky decided to offer its own commentary on what was being said. As though responding to Alexander's words with the precision of a witness who had been awaiting the right moment, the aurora borealis began to emerge, first as thin curtains of greenish light undulating gently on the northern horizon, then intensifying into a visual symphony of impossible colors, electric greens, deep violets, celestial blues, and occasional flashes of pink and gold dancing across the star-filled sky with the quality of a choreography planned by no human mind, yet possessing a precision greater than any planned choreography could have achieved. Amina whispered in reverence, "The dance of the gods." And all six fell into absolute silence, transfixed, each one feeling, without anyone needing to articulate it, that those lights were not merely a meteorological phenomenon, but an answer, a confirmation that what had taken place in that grotto had been recorded by something far beyond the scale of human understanding. The dawn and the call of the sacred water. The ancestor returned in the dream, and this time not as teaching, but as urgent instruction that could wait no longer. The first ray of sunlight touched Alexander's face through the opening of the tent with that particular gentleness of dawns on sacred mountains, which do not arrive with the abruptness of light that interrupts, but with the gradualness of a presence that invites. He had dreamed of the ancestor again, that luminous and imposing figure who had visited him in the depths of the enchanted grotto. And this time the dream contained no philosophical teaching, no revelation concerning Excalibur. It contained a clear, urgent, specific instruction. Every member of the group was to drink from the water that flowed from the sacred grotto. The message was not a suggestion, it was a mandate, carried with that quality of certainty that only dreams arriving from a place deeper than the individual subconscious are capable of conveying. Alexander left the tent with care not to wake Helena, who still slept with the restorative quality of sleep specific to those who have processed something immense during their waking hours and who require time for integration before returning completely to the world of light. He found Nevem already awake, feeding the fire with that anticipation of the day that marks those who have spent years living in a rhythm that answers to the sun before any clock. The two men exchanged a look of recognition, not the familiarity of old acquaintances, but something different. That recognition between souls who have not met before in this life, yet who carry the memory of encounters in other instances of existence, a memory held not in the mind, but in the blood. "I had a dream," Alexander began, warming his hands over the flames. "The ancestor, the presence that guided me when we were in the grotto, came to me again. He was very clear. We need to bring everyone to the spring we found up there. The water that flows from that source is not ordinary water, Nevem. It carries properties for which I have no adequate words in common language to describe." A pause waited with the care of one who chooses the next words deliberately, knowing they matter. But the ancestor was unequivocal. "Each one of us must drink from that water. It has the power to awaken gifts, capacities, and aspects of ourselves that remain dormant, waiting for the right moment and the right catalyst to flower into full expression." Nevem nodded with that slowness of confirmations that are not discoveries but recognitions, like one who receives information that a deeper part of them already possessed and which now simply finds a conscious form to inhabit. "It does not surprise me," he replied, his voice carrying the tone that had been growing more pronounced since they arrived in Thule, as though the place were gradually restoring to him a register of voice he had lost without realizing it had been lost. Places like this, sacred mountains, mystical grottos, territories where the veil between worlds grows thinner, frequently guard portals, catalysts, and initiations that wait for centuries for the right chosen ones. Water is one of the most powerful elements for transmutation and awakening. It carries memory, information, and vibration in ways that transcend its simple chemical composition. He inclined his head with that particular inclination of one accessing knowledge that was not learned from books. If the ancestor instructed you to bring all of us to drink from that spring, then each of us was called to this journey not merely to find Excalibur as a physical object, Alexander, but to find more complete and truthful versions of ourselves. And the sword, when we find her, will recognize not only the right blood, but the right readiness. Gradually, the other members of the group emerged from their tents, drawn by the smell of hot tea and the murmur of voices conversing with that quality of important conversation, distinguished not by volume, but by the quality of attention each word received. Helena was the first to join them, followed by Makeda and Amina, and finally by Hael, who emerged stretching himself with the genuine smile of one who has slept well and who, upon waking, finds the world as beautiful as he expected it to be. When all were gathered, warming their hands around steaming mugs of aromatic herbal tea, Alexander shared the nocturnal vision. He deliberately omitted the deeper details of the experience in the grotto, not from any lack of trust, but from that wisdom of revelations which must arrive through direct experience to be fully received, and which lose something essential when they arrive beforehand through another's narration. He emphasized only what needed to be understood for the next step: the ancestors' instruction, the sacred water, the purpose. "Then we will ascend to the grotto today," Alexander concluded, observing the faces of his companions. There was no hesitation, there was no fear, there was curiosity, anticipation, and, what moved him most deeply, a quiet trust that was different from courage. It was a faith that emerges not from certainty about what is to come, but from certainty about what has already been proven along the path that led them here. The mountain had given them reason to trust it. The forces governing that territory had demonstrated again and again that the dangers they imposed were trials rather than traps, that each difficulty served a purpose greater than the difficulty itself. "The water we will find up there," he said, reaching for the right words, "has the power to reveal us to ourselves, to awaken what has always been within each of us, waiting only for the right moment and the right catalyst to flower." And without further deliberation, because some moments call for action more than discussion, they began to prepare for the ascent. The ascent to the grotto and the waters of awakening. The path back to the grotto was not the same path as the first time, not because the trail had changed, but because those who walked it had changed, and the path that feet discover depends on the state of the one who carries them. Alexander and Helena led with that specific confidence of those who know the way, not as a memory of routes and landmarks, but as something more embodied, as though the ground had recognized their feet on the first passage and now recognized them again. Behind them, Makeda and Amina spoke in low voices, blending words from the lands of the Grande Mansa with expressions that seemed older still, as though the journey had activated in both of them layers of language that ordinarily remained submerged. Nevem and Hael closed the procession in a contemplative silence that was, for each of them, an active form of preparation, not an absence of thought, but attention directed inward, absorbing the energy of the place through every sense while orienting themselves toward what was to come. There was a processional quality to that ascent that no one had planned, but which emerged naturally when a shared purpose organizes the movement of individual bodies toward a single direction. When they reached the entrance to the grotto, concealed behind ice-covered rock formations that gleamed like giant crystals under the sunlight, with that beauty which is simultaneously invitation and warning, a reverential silence took hold of the group. Helena gently touched Makeda's shoulder and whispered, not with urgency, but with the care of words that prepare for what cannot be fully prepared for. What you are about to experience inside this grotto may challenge everything you believed you knew about the nature of reality, about yourselves, about the purpose of your lives. But trust the process. Trust the ancestors who guard this place. And above all, trust the deep wisdom that resides within each of you, even if you have not yet had conscious access to it. The words were not a promise that it would be easy. They were a recognition that what was to come would be real. One by one they entered the cavern, their eyes taking a few moments to adjust to the luminosity that existed within that interior space. Not darkness, never darkness, but that sui generis light of the crystals encrusted in the walls, which radiated an emerald blue clarity of a quality that transcended reflection. That was emanation, as though the rock had absorbed countless centuries of sacred intention and was now returning it in the form of visible luminescence. The sound of running water echoed melodiously, creating music that had not been composed, yet which possessed a deeper structure than much composed music, the emergent harmony of water and rock in a relationship that had endured longer than any human art. Alexander guided the group through narrow passages and broad chambers, each one revealing geological formations of a beauty that human language was not designed to fully describe. Stalactites and stalagmites that seemed to have been sculpted by artists who possessed all of eternity, pools of crystalline water that reflected the light of the crystals like liquid mirrors, inscriptions on the walls that no one could read, yet that everyone could feel vibrating with ancient meaning, like recognizing someone's voice before remembering where one has heard it. At last, they reached the central chamber where the thread of sacred water flowed from a fissure deep within the mountain. Modest in appearance, merely a small stream of crystalline water forming a shallow pool before disappearing through cracks in the floor, yet immense in presence. The energy emanating from that point was powerful, with that specific quality of power that requires no announcement because it is simply self-evident, like the thread of scent that precedes the ocean. One does not decide to notice it, one simply does. Nevem knelt first before the spring with the naturalness of one who recognizes a movement they had been waiting to make for a long time without knowing they had been waiting. His cupped hands gathered the ice-cold water and raised it to his lips, and when he drank, his eyes closed with that quality of closing belonging to those who are receiving something immense and who require a momentary darkness for the receiving to be complete. What changed in his expression when his eyes opened again was not dramatic. It was silent, but absolutely undeniable. It was like watching a window that had been closed open itself, not dramatically, but with the gentleness of things that should always have been open. Alexander watched as each member of the group approached the spring in turn, each with their own quality of receiving. Makeda with trembling hands and tears that began before the water touched her lips, as though her body already knew what was about to be revealed and could not wait to respond. Amina with the serenity of one who had already suspected the truths about to emerge, yet who still appeared profoundly moved by the confirmation that water carried. Hael, who fell to his knees upon drinking not in weakness, but in overwhelming reverence, his breathing deepening into a slow rhythm as though synchronizing with an invisible cosmic pulse. Helena, who drank again, and Alexander saw still deeper layers of understanding illuminating her eyes, as though the second draft dissolved veils that the first had only rendered transparent. When Alexander finally knelt and drank, he felt the water descend like liquid light, spreading through his body in simultaneous waves of heat and cold. Visions flooded his consciousness, not chaotic images, but structured revelations. Excalibur not merely as a physical sword, but as a living symbol, a dimensional key, a catalyst for transformations whose ripples would spread across time. Each of his companions not as they were in that moment, but as they would be when their full potentials were activated, and himself not as the seeker of a legendary relic, but as a node in a vast and intricate web of interwoven destinies. The gifts revealed and the transformation of Nevem. The silence that followed after all had drunk held that specific quality of silences that precede births, not emptiness, but fullness awaiting the form it will take when what is about to emerge finds its opening. Nevem was the first to speak, but when he opened his mouth, what emerged was not the voice his companions knew. It was the same voice, but inhabited by additional layers that had not been there before, like a musical note always present in the composition, yet only now was the ear sufficiently attuned to detect it. It was his voice, but also the voice of countless druids who had come before him, an ancestral lineage of guardians of sacred knowledge now flowing through him like a river that has finally found its proper bed, not forced, not dammed, but flowing with the naturalness of things that have arrived where they always should have been. "I remember," he murmured, and in his voice there was simultaneous surprise and inevitability, the surprise of one who finds, the inevitability of one who always knew they would find. "I remember who I am, why I was sent, what role I must play in this cosmic dance." He rose with the posture that had always been his, but which now carried an authority that had always been there, waiting only for the moment to be fully inhabited. Alexander and Helena drew close to Nevem, intuitively sensing that something deep and fundamental had been transformed, not in the sense that something external had changed, but in the more precise sense, something that had always been there had been revealed, something which had been concealed beneath layers of forgetting that the sacred water had simply dissolved. "I am not merely Nevem, the traveler who joined you in this quest for Excalibur," he began, his voice echoing softly through the crystalline walls. "I am Nevem, the druid, guardian of knowledge that spans millennia, keeper of portals between worlds. And I was sent specifically to accompany the two of you, Alexander and Helena, on a journey that is far more than you are yet fully able to comprehend in its totality. My presence here is not coincidence." A pause, weighted with the gravity of an affirmation that reorganizes everything that came before it. "Nothing in this expedition is coincidence." The words resonated through the chamber with that particular quality of truths which, once spoken aloud, make the listener realize they have always known them, but have never found the right words to give them form. Makeda stepped forward with wonder and that touch of reverential awe that is not fear, but the recognition of the magnitude of what stands before one. A druid? You mean, one of the ancient guardians of Celtic knowledge, priest of trees and stars, mediator between the visible world and the invisible? Nevem nodded with the gentle smile of those who recognize genuine understanding. Exactly that, and far more than even those descriptions can capture. The druids are architects of realities, weavers of destinies, keepers of secrets that hold the worlds in balance. He turned to Alexander with eyes that had carried only greater depth since the drinking. "Did you know this all along?" Alexander asked, quietly but directly. "From the very first time we met in Amesbury, did you already know who you truly were?" Nevem shook his head, compassion in his eyes. "Not completely. I had intuitions, fragments of memory that surfaced like half-forgotten dreams, a persistent sense of purpose I could not clearly articulate. But now, after drinking from this sacred water, the layers of forgetting that enveloped my true identity have been dissolved, and I remember the vow I made before I incarnated into this life." "There is a place called the Font of Remembrance," Nevem continued, his voice assuming the tone of one sharing secrets kept for ages, not because the secret needs to be kept from these particular people, but because the right moment for each revelation matters as much as the revelation itself. It is located in a sacred grove not far from Amesbury, concealed by veils of protection that can only be crossed by those who carry certain vibrational frequencies. That spring is not merely a water source. It is a dimensional portal, a point of intersection between multiple planes of existence, and there is a deep connection, a vibrational resonance between that spring and Excalibur. The sword was not forged in the physical world alone. It was woven across multiple dimensions, and its true power can only be accessed when the Chosen One, recognized by the sword itself, activates it through the correct ritual at the Font of Remembrance. Absolute silence. Even the sound of running water seemed to grow softer, as though the grotto itself were holding its breath. Helena broke the silence with that emergent understanding that arrives not as the conclusion of reasoning, but as the recognition of a truth the body had already accepted before the mind had finished processing it. Then, our journey does not end when we find Excalibur. Finding the physical sword is only the beginning. Nevem met her eyes with deep respect. "You understand correctly, Helena, and that is why you were chosen to walk beside Alexander on this journey." The revelations of Makeda and Amina. The revelation arrived not as a sudden event, but as the recognition of something that had always been present beneath layers which were only now becoming transparent. As Nevem's words still echoed through the crystalline chambers, Makeda felt a tremor move through her entire body, not from cold or fear, but from deep recognition. That particular tremor that occurs when fragmented pieces of a puzzle one did not even know was being assembled suddenly begin to fit together with a precision that exceeds any accident. She turned to Amina, the woman who had been her constant companion for as long as she could remember, always present, yet always maintaining a respectful distance, always serving, but never subservient, always watching with eyes that seemed to guard secrets Makeda had never thought to question until that exact moment. The sacred waters had dissolved more than veils of forgetting. They had rendered transparent the social illusions and the roles that obscured essential truths, like a mist lifting to reveal not a different landscape, but the same landscape seen with the clarity the mist had prevented. "Amina," Makeda whispered, her voice breaking with emotion that was equal parts shock, relief, and rising joy. "You are not merely my faithful handmaiden, are you?" Tears began to flow down Amina's face before she could even respond. And in those tears, Makeda saw the confirmation of everything that was emerging in her own expanded consciousness. They were not tears of sorrow, nor of guilt, nor of the relief of one caught guarding a secret. They were the tears of that specific emotion belonging to encounters that have been awaited a long time and which, when they finally arrive, carry within them the full accumulated weight of that waiting. Amina stepped forward, her hands reaching for Makeda's face with a tenderness that obeyed no protocol of handmaiden to lady. It obeyed only the most fundamental law that exists between two people. "No, my darling," Amina answered, her voice laden with decades of contained love and secrets kept not through dishonesty, but through the wisdom of a guardian who understood that there are revelations which arrive too early and which, arriving before their time, destroy what they should nurture. "I am your mother, Makeda. I am the woman who brought you into the world, who held you when you were a baby, who sang lullabies from the ancient traditions while you slept without knowing you needed them, yet absorbing them even so." Makeda felt her legs give way, and Helena quickly moved to support her, guiding her to sit upon a rock formation near the sacred spring. Makeda's mind spun with reinterpreted memories. Every moment of extra care Amina had shown, every barely concealed look of maternal worry, every piece of advice offered as humble suggestion, yet laden with a wisdom deeper than the position of handmaiden could justify. Everything made sense now with that retroactive clarity of revelations that do not change the past, but change entirely the way the past is read. "Why did you never tell me?" Makeda asked, not with anger, for anger would have been an inadequate simplification of the complexity of what she felt, but with that genuinely human mixture of shock and relief and joy, struggling to emerge through the layers of emotional processing. "All these years, you were beside me, you protected me, you guided me, and I never knew I was receiving the love of my own mother." Amina knelt before Makeda with that quality of kneeling that is not submission but honor, the gesture of one who recognizes that what stands before them deserves to be honored with every measure of presence one possesses. Because the traditions of the lands of the Grande Mansa require that the mother observe and guide without revealing her true role until the daughter awakens to her own gifts. Amina explained, her voice now carrying not only maternal emotion, but the authority of a spiritual master, revealing sacred truths long held in keeping. "And you have gifts, Makeda. Gifts inherited from an ancestral lineage of Wiccas. Wise women who understand the deep mysteries of nature, who know the healing and spiritual properties of every plant, every herb, every flower. Gifts that include the rare capacity to read hearts and intentions, to perceive the truth behind the masks that people wear, to feel the invisible currents of emotion and energy that flow between beings." And Amina's words awakened in Makeda not new information, but recontextualized memories. Moments when she had known things she should not have known, felt the emotions of those around her as though they were her own, perceived when someone was lying with a certainty that exceeded any specific detail that could have served as evidence. She had always attributed these experiences to common intuition. Now she understood that common intuition was the name the world gave to gifts it did not fully recognize. "Then you were preparing me all this time," Makeda murmured, and in her voice there was an admiration that grew as the understanding deepened. "Every story you told, every lesson about plants and natural remedies, every moment when you encouraged me to trust my feelings about people and situations, all of it was training in disguise, preparation for the moment when I would fully awaken to who I truly am." Amina smiled with that smile which carried within it decades of patient love, of a waiting that had not been easy, of holding love that longed to be declared and which had needed to remain veiled for reasons she had accepted as right even when they cost her dearly. "Exactly, and now that you have drunk from the sacred waters of this grotto, the last layers of obstruction have been dissolved. You are ready, Makeda. ready to embrace your full heritage as a Wicca, as a guardian of ancestral knowledge of the natural world and its mysteries, ready to use your gifts not only to protect yourself, but to guide and protect those around you. The two embraced then, mother and daughter at last united not only in affection but in mutual recognition, and in that embrace lived the entire history of a love that had existed without its full name for years, now finally finding the form it had always deserved to have. The evolution of Hael and the Sacred Pact. Hael had remained in contemplative silence since drinking from the sacred water, and his silence was different from the silence of the others. It was deeper, stiller, as though the water had dissolved not only veils, but the very internal noise that prevents certain perceptions from arriving. His eyes opened slowly, and within them was a clarity and depth that had not existed before, not added, but revealed, as though a crystal that had always been there had been polished until it reached the transparency that allows one to see through it rather than merely up to it. When he rose, his movements carried a grace and certainty that spoke of someone who had integrated something vast and transformative. Not learned grace, but the grace that emerges when body and soul find an alignment that eliminates the friction between what one is and what one does. "I see now," he said, and his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate not only in the air of the chamber, but in adjacent dimensions. "I see the celestial hosts, not as abstract concepts or mythical figures, but as real presences, hierarchies of consciousness operating at frequencies beyond common perception, guiding and influencing the unfolding of events in the physical plane with a careful attentiveness that no accident could replicate." Alexander drew close to Hael with that curiosity that is not intrusive, but which honors what is being revealed by giving it adequate space and attention. "What else do you see, Hael?" he asked gently. Hael smiled. That smile of deep peace that exists only in those who have found, at some very fundamental level, the place where they are meant to be. "I see the cycles of planting and harvest, of birth and death, of expansion and contraction that govern not only agriculture, but every manifestation in the material world. I see how each seed carries not only the potential for the physical plant, but codes of spiritual information that connect the small to the vast, the individual to the cosmic. And I see how illnesses, of both body and soul, are imbalances that can be harmonized through realignment with these natural cycles." He paused with that pause of one who is arriving at what matters most. "But above all, I see that I have been gifted with the gift of the peacemaker, the capacity to perceive the hidden roots of conflicts, to understand the unhealed wounds that cause people and groups to clash in antagonism, and to find the threads of connection that can weave back together what has been severed. This gift is not merely for resolving surface disputes, it is for healing deep divisions, for building bridges between worlds that appear incompatible, for reminding those who have forgotten that at the most fundamental level, everything emerges from the same unified source." It was then that Nevem stepped forward with that natural authority that had been his throughout the journey, but which was now fully inhabited rather than partially so. He positioned himself at the center of the group with the certainty of one who knows the moment has arrived, not because he planned it, but because he recognizes moments when they come, and this was one of them. "The moment has come," he declared, his druid's voice resonating with a power that required no volume to be immense. It was the quality of the voice, not the quantity. "To formalize the pact that unites us in this sacred journey. Alexander, Helena, come forward." The couple moved to stand before Nevem, feeling the weight of the moment with that specific clarity of instants we know, even as we live them, will be irreversible. Not because we will regret them, but because after them there will be no possible return to what came before. Nevem extended his hands, one over Alexander's heart, the other over Helena's. and began to speak in a language that none of them knew consciously, yet which all understood at some deep level of their souls. The ancestral tongue of the Druids, words of power that had been spoken in sacred rituals for millennia. I, Nevem, Druid of the unbroken lineage of the Guardians, make this solemn oath before the forces that bear witness beyond the veil, he proclaimed, his voice vibrating through dimensions that the physical senses only partially reached. I swear to protect Alexander and Helena in this sacred quest for Excalibur. I swear to guard the sword when it manifests, serving as custodian of its power until the appointed moment arrives. And I swear that when we return to the realm of Amesbury, I will conduct the ancestral ritual at the Font of Remembrance, that dimensional portal which awaits reactivation. For I know that spring is more than water. It is a passage between planes of existence, a point of convergence where the true chosen one will be revealed and recognized by Excalibur itself, allowing the sword's true purpose to be fulfilled at last. Alexander and Helena placed their hands over Nevem's hands with that naturalness of gestures that emerge before they are decided. We accept your protection and guidance, said Alexander, and we swear to honor the ancestral wisdom you carry, to follow your counsel as we navigate the challenges that will surely come, and to trust the process even when our limited minds cannot comprehend the greater purpose. Helena added, we also swear to protect one another, to maintain the unity of this sacred circle, and to remember always that we are not seeking personal power, but serving a purpose that benefits not only ourselves, but countless others whose lives will be touched by the ripples of our actions. The pact was sealed, and all those present felt a fundamental shift in the quality of the energy that bound them, not as outward drama, but as an inner quieting, as though something that had been ever so slightly out of alignment had found, at last, the exact position in which it was meant to rest. The thermal waters and the rebirth. The mountain had been waiting for the right moment to offer what it had to offer next, and the right moment, they discovered, was now. After the ritual of the pact in the Sacred Grotto, the group began its descent down the mountain, each member processing internally the transformations they had experienced with that particular need of certain processes to unfold in interior silence before being shared aloud. Hael, whose newly sharpened senses seemed to perceive aspects of the environment invisible to the others, not because he possessed any special sight, but because he had learned to direct attention toward what had always been present, yet which most did not know how to observe, stopped abruptly and tilted his head as though listening to something. There is something more here, he murmured, with the certainty of one who does not speculate but perceives. Something the mountain wishes to offer us as a gift, as acknowledgement of our transformations. He guided the group along a narrow path between moss-covered rocks and ice until they emerged into a hidden clearing that stole the breath from everyone with that gentle brutality of beauties that arrive without warning and that do not concern themselves with whether one was ready to receive them. Before them, steaming softly in the cold afternoon air, was a thermal spring, a natural pool of water heated by the depths of the earth, surrounded by smooth rocks polished by centuries of exposure to vapor and water. The contrast was surreal, with that surrealness that is not artificial, but which emerges when very different elements coexist with such perfection that their coexistence seems designed. Snow falling gently all around, sharp cold air, and there at the center, that oasis of liquid warmth emanating vapor that rose in ethereal spirals toward the sky. The surface of the water shimmered with golden reflections of the oblique sunlight. Makeda was the first to speak, her voice full of reverential wonder. It is as though the mountain itself is offering us a bath of purification. Nevem nodded with the recognition of one who had been expecting precisely this. Thermal waters in sacred places have always served as portals of rebirth. The heat comes from the depths of the earth, from the very heart of the planet. and carries minerals and energies that not only heal the physical body, but facilitate integrations at subtle levels. After transformative experiences, such as those we have lived today, a bath in water such as these is not a luxury. It is a ritual necessity. The women went first, each finding a semi-private space among the rocks where they could submerge in the healing waters while maintaining a respectful distance that was an expression of the recognition that each transformation required space to be processed individually before being shared collectively. Helena tilted her head back, her hair floating around her like the tendrils of a sea creature from an ocean far older than any geographical ocean, and closed her eyes as she allowed the memories and insights of the day to flow through her consciousness without attempting to organize them. Because there is wisdom that emerges only when we stop trying to understand and simply allow what needs to be integrated to find its own way. Makeda wept softly as she processed the revelation about Amina, with those tears that are not of sorrow, but of the dissolution of a distance that had existed without anyone having wished it into being. Amina meditated in silence, sending gratitude to the ancestors who had guided everything to that moment of revelation and reunion. When the men entered the thermal waters, there was in each of them a different quality of entry, not random, but revealing of where each one stood in his own process. Alexander entered with the slowness of one offering to the warmth the weight he had been carrying, not because he wished to undo the responsibility, but because he had understood that the weight of purpose need not be carried with tension. It can be carried with a lightness that comes from genuine alignment with what one is doing. Nevem submerged completely, plunging his head beneath the steaming surface with that total gesture of those who are not washing themselves, but renewing themselves. And when he emerged, he had left behind the last layers of his former limited identity with that completeness that only full immersion allows. Hael floated on his back, gazing up at the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. Feeling the celestial hosts, he now perceived clearly, feeling the cycles of nature pulsing through all things, feeling his new role as peacemaker, not as an imposed part, but as the natural expression of who he was in his deepest essence. When the three men emerged from the waters and reunited with the women, the group possessed that quality which only certain shared experiences create, not simply people who are together, but people who are something together that none of them is separately. It was then that Helena turned to Alexander with eyes shining with that particular longing that is at once simple and profound, which comes from the heart before it comes from the mind. Alexander, before we return to Amesbury, before we leave the sacred place that has transformed us so completely, I have a request. She looked toward the sky where the curtains of green and violet light of the aurora borealis were already beginning to ripple. Fearing I may never again see the dance of the gods in all its glory, I wish to make use of these warm waters the mountain has offered us and spend the night awake here, watching the lights dance. Alexander smiled with that smile that is not a response to the request, but a recognition of the person who makes it, with all the love that such recognition contains. Then we shall stay. All of us shall stay, if that is what you wish. And the unanimity with which the others responded was not of obedience, but of gratitude for the suggestion that articulated what all of them already felt, that something still remained to be completed, and that this vigil was the form that something needed to take. The Sacred Vigil and the Return. The night that followed was one of those that are not kept by memory, but by the soul. And the distinction matters because memories fade, but what the soul keeps remains. They spread among the rocks around the thermal waters, each member finding their own space with that naturalness of groups that have developed their own language of mutual respect, distance enough for privacy, closeness enough that there is no solitude. The sensory contrast was simultaneously startling and sublime with that specificity of experiences the body does not forget. Body immersed in liquid warmth, face and head touched by the frozen air and by the snowflakes that continued to fall intermittently, and above, the aurora borealis unfolding in a display that surpassed everything they had witnessed the night before. It was as though the gods themselves were celebrating the transformations that had occurred that day, painting the firmament with colors that do not belong to the ordinary visible spectrum, that seem to belong to a wider spectrum the human eye accesses only under certain conditions of interior openness, which the aurora borealis seemed to recognize and honor. Helena floated in the warm waters with only her shoulders and head above the surface, and each wave of color that passed through the sky seemed to correspond to a wave of understanding that passed through her consciousness, with that correspondence which is not coincidence, but the universe being consistent with itself. She saw with clarity that her journey with Alexander was not a common romance or an ordinary adventure. It was a joint initiation, an alchemical marriage of energies that needed to unite in specific ways so that certain portals could be opened. Excalibur was not simply a sword waiting to be found. It was a symbol of union, of the integration of polarities, of balance restored between forces that history had separated for far too long. And there was something comforting in understanding this. Not the responsibility diminished, but the responsibility contextualized, set within a purpose large enough that it is worth carrying. Makeda and Amina shared a space nearby. Mother and daughter finally united openly after years of love concealed beneath social roles. And what existed between them in that silence needed no words, because it had arrived at the point where words would be only approximations of something that presence expressed with greater precision. Hands that met occasionally beneath the water, fingers interlaced in silent confirmation of a bond recognized and honored. Makeda felt her new Wicca gifts awakening layer by layer with that gradualness of a consciousness that does not explode all at once, but which expands like circles in water, each one reaching a little further than the one before. She could feel the energies of plants growing hidden beneath the snow, could perceive the intentions and emotions of each member of the group, could sense the invisible currents of vital force connecting all things, mountain, water, sky, bodies, souls, in a unified tapestry of interconnected existence. Nevem and Hael occupied the opposite side of the thermal pool, and between them lay that specific silence of those who have no need of conversation, because they are already sharing something more fundamental. Not thoughts, but states. Not information, but presence. Nevem felt the font of remembrance in Amesbury pulsing in his consciousness, even across the distance, that dimensional portal awaiting its activation like an instrument awaiting its musician, not impatiently, but ready, carrying within itself all the possibility that can only be actualized when the right conditions arrive. Hael watched the aurora borealis with eyes that saw the celestial hosts moving through the curtains of light as seeing not metaphor but reality, hierarchies of consciousness orchestrating events in the material plane in ways that most humans would never suspect. And he understood that his role as peacemaker was not limited to the interpersonal. It was a cosmic calling to harmonize discordant energies at levels that encompassed far more than the human. The hours passed in a state of expanded consciousness where linear time had clearly decided to be irrelevant to that particular gathering, as though the mountain, which had already demonstrated its capacity to manipulate temporality in service of greater purposes, had extended that generosity to the final vigil, granting the group more time than any clock would have allowed to integrate what had been received. They spoke occasionally in murmurs, sharing insights with that particular quality of sharing which emerges when what one has to offer is not theory, but recent experience still warm from transformation. When at last the aurora borealis began to diminish in intensity and the first light of dawn touched the eastern horizon with that particular timidity of dawns that know they are replacing something very beautiful and which, out of respect for what they replace, arrives slowly, all six felt simultaneously, without anyone needing to articulate it, that it was complete, that the cycle had closed. that it was time to return to the common world carrying treasures that had no weight, yet were more real than any heavy thing they could have brought. They emerged from the thermal waters with that particular quality of those who have undergone a true purification, not clean in the superficial sense of cleanliness, but renewed in the profound sense of what happens when what had been occupying space improperly is dissolved, leaving more room for what should always have been there. As they dressed and prepared for the descent to where the Aletheia awaited, Alexander gathered the group one final time with that simple authority of leaders who require no ceremony for what they say to be received with full attention. "We climbed this mountain as seekers, and we descend as chosen ones," he said, his voice carrying emotion he made no attempt to conceal. "We came looking for a legendary sword and found more truthful versions of ourselves. And we return not as the same ones who departed, but as bearers of gifts, of missions, of a sacred pact that unites us not only to one another, but to a purpose that transcends us." He looked at each face around him with that attentiveness which is a form of love. Whatever awaits us at the font of remembrance, whatever comes next in our quest for Excalibur, we will face it together, no longer as separate individuals, but as a unified circle of the chosen. And with those words, which were not merely the closing of a speech, but a sound record of irreversible transformation, they began their descent down the snowy mountain, leaving behind the Sacred Grotto and the thermal waters, yet carrying with them transformations that could never be left behind, because they had now become part of the very fabric of who they were. There was no return to the before. The before had been replaced by something truer, and the descent they made was not an abandonment of the place, but a departure toward the next chapter of a mission this place had prepared them to live. In the next episode, the font of remembrance in Amesbury awaits, not as a geographical destination, but as a meeting arranged before any of them was born. Nevem carries within his newly awakened druid memory the knowledge of the rituals that will need to be performed to reactivate that dimensional portal. Hael carries the capacity to see the celestial hosts and the cycles that govern the right moment for each sacred action. Makeda carries the Wicca gifts of her ancestral lineage, which will resonate with the font in ways they do not yet fully understand. Amina carries decades of patient preparation that will now find their declared purpose. Helena carries the vision of the distant descendant, the one she has not yet been able to share completely, but which guides, even in silence, every choice she makes. And Alexander carries the resonance learned in the ancestors' chamber, that frequency which must be spoken at the precise moment with the sacred name that will call the sword across the ages. When they reach the font of remembrance and the ritual is set in motion, what Excalibur will reveal will not simply be where it is. It will be who is ready for it. And that revelation, which no council of sages could anticipate, which only the sword itself can make, will alter not only the destiny of the Six, but will send ripples traveling through time, reaching generations that do not yet exist. Yet who will need what is being sown now?